Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever it is, wherever you are. Hello. My name is Dave Wilber, and sometimes referred to as the Turfgrass Zealot. Hi. Good morning. We're live on YouTube. It's morning for me, 7 a.m. here in beautiful, colorful Colorado. It's going to be a gorgeous day. We've had some amazing weather here. We'll be talking about the weather just a little bit. Music choice today from Epidemic Sound, you know, the copyright-free people that I just love. And I mean that wholeheartedly. They're amazing. We just got this great funk playlist going here, which is just brilliant, actually. So we're gonna do with some old school funk today as our background stuff. And YouTube's laws are pretty draconian about using other people's materials, which they probably should be. So I use this this great service, Epidemic Sound. And by the way, if you're producing any videos or anything like that, you can use Epidemic Sound, and it's pretty low fee kind of thing for what you get. So, you know, just a hint. If those of you that are doing your own YouTube things or whatever, they have been nothing but a pleasure to deal with. All right. Well, the man cave here, the bear cave, is rolling. New lights, new cameras, new stuff. It's just really good, you know? Like, I'm happy. Let's see. I don't know if this will work. Oh, yeah, there's the old camera. There's the old camera, right? Yeah, here's the old guy. It's not pointing at me, I guess, but yeah, we're in a whole different space technology-wise here, for sure. Okay, I'm just kind of checking the stream health and just making sure everything is kind of going how it's going, and looks like we have really good connections this morning. And golly, how. Nothing but good, right? Nothing but good. You are invited to join the chat, of course. If you're here live, please just, you know, say whatever you want to say. It's fine. And of course, that chat will replay as long as the video stays up on YouTube. So there's that. And of course, it helps me a ton if you like this video, hit the thumbs up and hit the bell for notifications and subscribe and all that sort of stuff. It just it engages the algorithm from YouTube and makes YouTube work in the way that it's supposed to work, in that social media directed kind of crazy way. All right, so some interesting things to talk about, and we're gonna get some agronomy today. But thought we would just tip on a couple of things that I want to talk about. I have a couple of old friends from a thing that was called the Well in San Francisco. It was the Whole Earth Electronic Link, and Well was this amazing group of people, what I loved about the Well, okay, was like, imagine all the smartest people you can think of all dumped into one place, you know. And it was, you know, I joined in 1994. It's simply to get I didn't even know there was a conferencing thing, or, you know, it was essentially one of the early forums. I just needed an email address, and that was how to get it. Hey, good morning. Got some chat going on. Justin Woodland is here. Hey, Justin. I'm gonna get to you in just a second. So, yeah. So anyway, a couple of the people, the young coder types, you know, the young code warriors, from that scene, are now pretty higher ups in the whole Twitter universe thing, right? As far as like building, creating, making Twitter run, you know, software engineers, right? And so I keep track of those guys. We still chat, we still hang out a little bit, and And I've just been watching this whole thing go down with Elon Musk and Twitter. And of course, so have they. And by the way, I'm not mild with them when it comes to what I think about, some of the things Twitter is and isn't, and what the original thoughts were. And, two of them have been there. They have been there, almost since the beginning, right? So they've watched, they watched the thing grow from just, hey, let's send a few characters to our friends to something big. And they're a little startled at all of the things that are going on. And, and whether or not they'll even be at Twitter, if Musk actually does this takeover thing. But it doesn't look like that's it's very tough to take a public company and make it private again, and they'll certainly try to block that, but it's just been interesting to watch. Very interesting to watch. What's been really interesting to me is the number of people who have been talking about free speech and stuff. And we're not going to get political here, but free speech, journalism, all those sorts of things have changed in such a big way. And whether you can or cannot tweet on Twitter or edit your tweets, which I'm very much against, right? I mean, you either put it up or you put it away. To me, there's no middle ground. There's no going back, right? So that's one of the things I love about it. And somehow somebody's gotten the idea that Musk wants you to be able to edit, which I don't think is true. I think that's urban rumor. If Musk buys it, then we'll be able to edit our tweets. No, I don't see that. I really don't. Again, you can say something or you can take it away, but you own it, right? So that's kind of, that's just making me laugh but it's funny, we seem to have experts, depending on what the trend is in the world, whether it's health or constitutional law or now, the First Amendment. We're filled with experts, Facebook experts and Twitter experts and stuff. And so it's just funny to me. So I've been laughing at the whole thing, but I will certainly be watching the Twitter thing with much interest. And because I use Twitter. We tweet. I mean, Justin Woodland's here in the chat this morning. We use Twitter, and it's been good for business. It's been good for information sharing, and the good parts of it have been phenomenal. The bad parts are just, they're the bad parts, right? You don't drive on the bad roads. That's what I always tell people. If you're talking about the information superhighway, don't drive on the bad roads. Don't do it. All right, what else is going on with me? It's springtime, and springtime comes with all kinds of things. Tax season, all the, April just seems to be kind of a mess, and for so many people, I think they are just barely keeping up. And as I've spoken to some golf course superintendents, turfgrass managers, it's like, well, we're just barely keeping up. All right, I want to get to it here this morning. Oh, one more thing. I'm excited. I have been asked, this is such a cool thing. I've been asked to be on the 100th episode of Earthworks podcast, videocast, as a guest along with Armin Suni, because I guess our two episodes, or our various episodes, have had the most amount of views. So they invited us to come together and do that. And Joel Simmons and Kevin Hicks are going to moderate the thing. And we're recording that when I finish here this morning, just in a couple hours. And I'm super stoked about that whole deal, because wow, right? Like, what a thing. And it's just cool. It's just cool that I didn't know this, but I think I like being a guest sometimes. I like just kind of hanging back and letting it happen, whatever's going to happen. And, that's pretty cool. So I love that. And I love that. I'm loving this playlist. Kind of cool. I don't know that I'm loving this right here. Here, we'll do this. Oh yeah. There's the vibe. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk agronomy. I have always been very big on this whole idea. And again, I think, we're talking about this time of year. We're probably talking about cool season grass. And I know some of you are not cool season people, so, bear with me. We're also talking about, that kind of thing where, things have been dormant or relatively dormant. There's been a winter, there's been a season of winter, and we're coming out of it. And I know coming up in the business in Denver, Colorado, as an example, there were these landmark dates, and one of the landmark dates always was, Easter, right? So Easter's tomorrow, and everybody would say, don't do this before Easter, don't do this after Easter, things like that, right? Same thing, Labor Day, Father's Day. There's these landmark dates that people would always talk about. At least, is there a better word than landmark? I don't know. That's bookmark, landmark. Anyway, that's the whole thing. And so, here we are, right? Easter, tomorrow, full moon tomorrow. Lots of interesting agronomic things tomorrow. This week, whatever. And what's prompted all this is that I drove by a sports field the other day that is near my home. It's a pretty heavily used sports field, and soccer is in full bloom, right? Football, and the baseball teams are out playing. I mean, it's that time of year, right? Everybody wants to be outside, and that particular sports turf manager had the water just roaring, the sprinklers everywhere, right? And not just checking sprinklers. I mean, they were irrigating. And I just shook my head, man, and I was like, oh no. And then I started looking around, and I noticed people irrigating. And there was a golf course that I drove by with water flying. And there was another golf course I drove by that has got no water flying. Right now, golf course B that hasn't shown any irrigation isn't probably looking as good. There isn't probably as much green up there. And so what? That's okay, right? That's okay. And I'm applauding the place that I see that is looking a little bit on the dry side. And I've always said to people, man, this time of year is so irrigation critical, because you want to get some moisture going or rely on some moisture. And maybe, especially in the Western United States, we haven't had a lot of moisture coming out of the air. The snowfalls here, the rain events and all that sort of stuff, they've been so minimal and in this drought pattern. And so, it's tough, right? It's like, oh man, I want to use my irrigation system. And the thing that I tell people, and I wrote a TurfNet column about this years ago. I should have probably hunted it up, but it's on TurfNet somewhere. It's like, don't be an irrigation monkey, don't be an early season irrigator. Don't be a premature irrigator is what I was saying. And it's like, it's such a big deal, especially for cool season grass, especially for, that emergence out of winter kind of thing. And really anytime you're, I guess you're transitioning seasons, this sort of applies. But, this is the time. And the oversimplification is, we want to let those roots go down. Yes, of course. But, in my world, roots are going to go down if you irrigate right and aerify anyway. That's the whole thing. But there's this idea of dependency, right? And the dependency is, I want those plants that are going to be hardy and tough and all that sort of stuff. I want them to be the winners, right? And the way I express this is in the turfgrass systems that I love. The best grasses are the ones that they survive in poverty, right? And they survive in adversity. And so if I'm always babying them, if I'm always making it easy, for that system, then I'm actually helping the wrong friends. I'm helping the wrong grasses, and that's not necessarily the thing, right? So like I'm looking, and I hate it when people say, "Oh, my yard," geez, anytime I was at a green committee meeting, one of the members, well, my yard, but I experiment a lot here, in my yard and here in Denver, and I don't irrigate. Okay, let me just put that to you first of all. Okay, I don't have an irrigation system here. I don't irrigate. I've pulled a hose only in the wintertime when it's been cold and dry and we've needed water. I've never irrigated here since I've been at this place in the summertime, ever. Okay, and I've planted fescues, I've planted a bunch of different stuff. I've got some baby clover going, for the whole system. I mean, that's, it's a lawn, right? And, my personal belief is here in Denver, Colorado, we don't have enough water for people to be irrigating their lawns. And, this big corporate, like there's a corporate place that I drive by, they get this big, landscape area and it's all grass and, big hillside, and, they just water the hell out of it, right? It's making me crazy. We just don't have that kind of water here. This is the home of xeriscaping, right? So I don't irrigate, much to the chagrin of my neighbors sometimes, who irrigate, on the daily, even though we're only supposed to in Denver water every third day here. They don't seem to care about that. And so, what I have is I have this, I have a bunch of poverty happy grasses, right? They're happy being poor. They're happy. I fertilize once a year and I don't irrigate. Now, I'm not saying that that's how you need to do your golf course. Like, that's not it at all. We know that when we're managing a playing surface and, and putting on, the event that we put on, whether it's golf or, whatever you're doing with a playing surface, right? There's more to it than that, right? It's not the lawn. I don't drive trucks on my lawn. I don't, my backyard where the dogs get crazy, it's pretty dog proof these days. It wasn't in the beginning. It just wasn't. It was wimpy, And we always used to talk about things and, like, yeah, sure, I could get some ryegrass and put a bunch of water and nitrogen on it and have a bunch of green grass and it's wimpy. And, the first day that it gets really, really hot, blam, it's gone, right? And there was this thing. And in fact, I think Armin and I will end up talking about this a little bit, but this idea, there were a bunch of us in Colorado back in the 80s that would, we'd actually compare notes to see how long we could go without irrigating, and I went almost 14 days once, in a hot period, and it was, it was trying, right? It was like, ouch. And, and if I went out and looked at the golf course at 2 in the afternoon, it was, of course, wilting and turning all kinds of fun colors. And you think, oh my God, and then you come in the next morning after some dew and all that. And it's like, oh, this place is pretty good. And, the golf course played great and everything was really, a lot of things were a lot easier. And I guess that's what I'm getting to, is that so many things are easier when we don't get in the way. And this is that minimalist thinking. So many things are easier when we don't get in the way. And so, yeah, the modern irrigation system is this, is this amazing thing, right? We all have control and, this head, that system, this system, whatever. And, we want to use those things, right? Want to use them. Well, the thing is, and this is what I say to people all the time, like, if you really want to create this turfgrass system that is going to be tough, that is going to be that is going to endure some adversity. That's a great way to put it, huh? I don't know that I've ever said it that way. Endure some adversity. Then, we can't baby it along. We just can't. And so one one of my big moves always has been not to baby the thing in the early season. Okay. Not to baby thing in the thing in the early season means to me, I don't want to give it much. I don't want to make an artificial kind of deal with that, right? This is very philosophy kind of oriented. I'm sure somebody who's, you want to talk plant physiology and soil science and stuff with me. Yeah, there's a little more to it than that. But I'm talking management philosophy stuff. And so many times people want to talk about minimalism, but they don't act minimal, right? You hear what I'm saying? And so this time of year, too much water too early is just a bad thing. It sets up all kinds of wrong things along the way. Along with that, too much fertility too early sets up a bad thing. Everybody wants to get the spray rig out and get going. I get it, man. You've been looking at that thing collecting dust all winter, and it's like, let's get the spray rig out. Let's do something. But that ends up being a fail. It ends up being a fail because it sets up this first kind of, I hate to use the word expectation because that's not exactly how that system works. But it's essentially saying, hey man, I'm gonna baby you along, and the plants that are struggling the most are gonna get some help, and I actually want some of those grasses not really to develop that much. Which grass do I not want to develop that much in that situation? Let's see. Let's think. It's that annual grass. It's that annual bluegrass. POA, right? I mean, the debate about POA, and let me just say, I love POA as a putting surface, and there's great things about POA, but man, it's a pain in the neck. And the other thing is, because there's so much genetic diversity, is that the POA that happens in the high country of Colorado versus Denver versus Fresno, California, they're just such different animals. You get in the mountains, you get this POA that the first 80-degree day it just lays on its back, and it's when it's 80 in Fresno, that's actually a cool day, right? And the POA, you see these plants and they're so different. There's the reptans varieties and all those things. The perennial POA. So I have a hard time with that one. But yeah, I understand the POA reptans, and I understand the disease, and and so do we all, right? There's stuff. And so often you ask a golf course superintendent, well, how much POA do you have in your greens? And they go, oh, 10, 12%, and it's more like 60. I just don't want to water the stuff, man. I don't want to give it that advantage. I don't want to put water on it. If I'm going to deal with annual bluegrass, if I'm going to deal with POA, I want to deal with the POA plants that are going to hang in there and be my friends on a hot day. And so I don't want to create this environment where they're getting babied in the early season. Bent grass the same way. Really. I mean, if we're talking about all the C3 grasses, it applies. And it does apply for the C4 grasses as far as that goes, except for kind of during the emergence period. Bermuda grass, laying off the water when Bermuda grass is coming on sometimes can be a really bad thing, right? So that's the exception to me. And so, we go back to the idea of premature irrigation. And I say, please, just don't turn that water on until you absolutely have to. Watch some wilt happen, okay? Well, let the ball run. Let your seniors who haven't played golf all winter, let them enjoy that extra 20 yards of roll. Don't irrigate. It's not going to get hot. The soil temperatures are down. Why put the water to the thing? And along the same lines, when we talk about, I know there's a lot of, now we're all talking about growing degree days and, growth curves and, and all that stuff, right? And, really applying fertility during this time of year when if you're just thinking about the plant isn't really, what needs to happen, right? And, if you're a charts and graphs kind of person, you can look a bunch of this stuff up. You can see what Larry Stowell and Mike Woods and those guys are doing with this, with this thing, and timing of fertility applications and what the plant really needs and when, it just comes down to basic physiology. So again, we've been sitting around, we've been watching that fertilizer spreader's just sitting there, the spray tank's just sitting there, and let's get out there with this stuff, man. Let's roll. No, you got to lay off. One great story of mine was I was trying years ago to buy one of the newfangled Lilly spreaders that would attach to my tractor, and that was all about ground speed and stuff, right? So there was, I don't know that they even make it now, but at the time it was just it was this great unit that and it was just a way to make sure that if I if we were going up a hill or whatever, that your application rates would be the same. And once we got the thing set up, it was beautiful. It took a little bit to get it started, but I ordered this thing from Lilly, and my distributor I don't know what happened. They couldn't get their hands on it, or it was, stuck in customs. I have no idea, but it took them an extra month, right, to get this thing delivered. Well, in the meantime, stupidly, I had taken, I'm saying Lilly, Vicon was the, excuse, been so long ago, was the Vicon unit, right? And I had an old Lilly spreader, and the thing was just beat to death, and it's like, no, we're not using this. And even with some rebuild the feed ring and stuff, it's like, I just don't trust it, right? The differential was all messed up. It just wasn't right. So no, let's get the new technology, and being the early adopter I am, we went for the Vicon, and with the ground control and all the stuff. And again, when it was working, when I got it working and got it right, it was perfect. It took a little bit to get it all together, but we had to wait for the thing. And I'm on the phone yelling at my distributor, because we're coming up into May. We got the Ladies Invitational happening. I want to turn the place a little bit green. And I've got fertilizer sitting there that's been sitting there that I harassed my my distributor to get. This custom blend, and I got nothing to spread it with. So we ended up applying some fertilizers just kind of with RH, by hand in some areas, and around the clubhouse and stuff like that. And then we waited until we had the Vicon all up and going and doing, and I didn't want to make any mistakes with that, so it took some time. And finally, it's like, okay, finally we get a fertilizer app out. The best turf on the golf course after that fertilizer app, and I think so you understand, it was like, my custom blend was like a 5-20-20 kind of thing, 6-20-20, so not much, not relying on nitrogen. I never did rely on nitrogen in my world, but we needed the P and the K, and so bang, once it happened, play screens up. But what I noticed is that the stuff that we had spread by hand, that we had went out and spread by hand, was actually weaker as we went through the summer. And my stuff that got the late fertilization actually was so much better. And that had me thinking, oh, I better dig in, I better understand this more. And from that, we started to develop better timing philosophies and whatnot. All very good. So what I'm saying to you, long story short, what I'm saying to you is, how about just backing off? Like everybody wants to get on the throttle this time of year, and I get that. And there are things to throttle with, right? Like you got aerification to do, you got some projects to do, you got some repairs to do. All of those things, yeah, you can't get enough work done, But man, using that irrigation system too much, using it at all for some people, is in my mind just a big mistake. It's an easy mistake to make, and it's one of those things where if you practice, trying to do more with less, then you've got to look at things like that and say, did I really need to do that? Was that necessary? And here in this kind of, cold winter climate kind of place that, that I live in now, and in places like that, again, where there's seasonal differences, so many times, that winter irrigation is more important than what we would do in the springtime. Just to make sure that we keep some soil moisture levels there for the dormant grasses, so the freeze dry thing doesn't happen, right? So, I said this years ago when we were looking at Ballyneal for the first time. We're looking at the what is now called Ballyneal, but before it wasn't called anything. It was just this piece of ground, and that a couple of guys were doing the if we build it, will they come kind of thinking. And Tom Doak and company, asked me to take a look at the whole thing, and I looked at it all and looked at the sands and everything, and I said the biggest thing is because at the time they really didn't have any water, and they weren't sure how to get water, and there was a lot of talk about water. And I said, well, and they're talking about summertime water, right? Because the corn farmers need their water, right? And so we can't get it from them. And I'm like, well, guys, I think the big thing is going to be winter water, and that has turned out to be the case. And the winter irrigation, at places like Ballyneal, Sandhills, all those things they're critical. And I think if you ask anybody who's managed grass in those places, they'll tell you that winters are pretty tough when it comes to freeze-dried conditions. So we were always like, wow, let's just make sure we have winter water. We can probably get through the summer with minimal, if any at all. Same thing with the early version of the sheep ranch. Christmas, Oregon, it's going to rain on the coast and all those sorts of things. But we just don't need to. We need to look at this from a different angle. We need to look at the dry season, and we need to look at the cold season, and we need to figure out how that kind of fits. So I'm very big on telling people this time of year to just take it easy. Just hang back on that gas pedal a little bit, hang back on that irrigation switch. So many golf course superintendents know right in their heart, they're like, I don't know if I should water or not. And so they do anyway, just to make themselves feel better. But there's a part of their brain that knows I don't need to do that. Right? It's not critical if I do that. So, that's what I love about that stuff isn't our business so cool that we can sit and really dig into something seemingly small like that, can it end up turning out really big, and say, can I change my entire way of being, by just thinking philosophy a little bit and doing things just a little bit differently, and looking at things in a way that maybe somebody else wouldn't look at it and say, can this fit in my situation? And that's really what it comes down to. I think in a way that's really what minimalism is. I think that's what advanced turfgrass management really is. I think so many people think that they want to absorb as many charts and graphs as they can, and hey, that's great. Get technical. I mean, I love it. Never stop learning. But some stuff, we have to really kind of look at it and say, okay, this is intrinsic to agriculture and agricultural methods, and what is the actual need of the plant and the philosophy, behind it. And so for me, that's why this time of year, right around Easter, landmark date, I'm frequently giving people the lecture. And I'll do it in some funny ways. Superintendent will call me up we have consulting visits now on Zoom and stuff, right? And I had one the other day, and I just asked so are you irrigating? Yeah, and like, why? Huh? Well, what are your soil temperatures? What are your air temperatures? What are what's your What's your nitrogen uptake potential? You know, all that stuff. What's your growth potential? And they're like, huh? I'm like, you don't need to be watering. Don't. Just don't. And those are great conversations. And, you know, that's what I get paid to do, right? Is to bring a perspective to the table that somebody may not have thought of, or at least some things to try. And sometimes, you know, in some situations, you know, there are no rules, right? So I can say, well, don't. But, you know, there may be that somebody that has that soil type, that whole system that, yeah, you know, these early waters are important. And that's, you know, that can happen. So I'm interested when people talk to me about irrigation, and I always love the conversation about irrigation. And I think in the Western United States, we thrive on it. We thrive on the conversation of irrigation. So that's why I like to have it. And that's why I like to challenge people to dig a little deeper and look a little harder and see what's really happening and go through it that way. So let me challenge you today. If you're watching, listening, dig in a little bit and say, why? Why am I doing that? What is my irrigation philosophy here in this moment? What am I doing right now? And look at that hard. And it could be that you've got some, you know, some great potential to make some changes, you know, and you say, wow, that thing I didn't do in April, you know, that water I didn't put down in April is making my August a little bit happier. And that's where we're going with that. So, all right. So that's it, man. That's the funk of the day. I'm just happy to be here today. And, I love doing this. I love making it happen. And I appreciate you guys being here again. If you haven't, please subscribe, please like, you know, help me out with the whole, YouTube scene, and that'll be good. I'm looking at the chat. Anybody in chat have anything for me today? Random questions you want to ask? Wilber, you're full of shit. Any of that? Yeah. I know, I love our thing. You know, I can see that we have viewers, but I also see that, you know, I understand some people they're not gonna, you know, they're not exactly live with this. You know, a lot of people have told me, hey, you know, I'd love to be in the chat, but I'm listening, you know, an hour later, 2 hours later, a day later. That's fine. That's fine. You know, yell at the screen if you want. So, all right, I don't see much in the chat, and I want to kind of keep this episode short, and I have another, like, say we're doing the Earthworks 100th episode thing, so I want to prep for that. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to prep. I don't know. Why did I say that? Prep for that? Yeah. I want to have a protein shake and a cup of coffee. How about that's my prep, and get that together. But it is a great joy to be here. Oh yeah, indicator plants. That's a really good one, Justin. So yeah, we've always talked about, you know, when in your particular area do we do things based on what is happening with, you know, with plants, right? I mean, I'll give you an example right from, again, here we go back to Dave's yard. I have this gnarly old ugly crab apple in my backyard. It really should go, but it's, I don't know, I have some sort of love for it because it's ugly. And it's actually also proven to be a little bit of bee habitat around the bottom of it. I planted some meadow type grasses and stuff, and so we've been seeing some bees out there and stuff, and I kind of like that. I might even put a hive out, right? So, but I know that when this crab apple starts to kind of, you know, when it starts to bud and bloom, that I have to have some things done, you know, and it means that I have to, you know, to deal with another tree that I have, which is a problem tree. And like, I'm looking at my lilacs that border my property, and they're just starting to bud, you know, which again tells me I need to be on it. I think in every climate, there are indicator plants that will tell you better than the calendar will about what you need to be doing and when, especially when we're talking about pre-emergent, timings and things like that. We control moments. Again, those landmark dates, yeah, they can be on the calendar and that's really good. But the indicator plant may say, hey, I'm early or I'm late or whatever. And I remember talking with a lot of the superintendents around the Sacramento area because there's so many different types of plants and stuff. And I remember one guy talking to me one time and telling me that the almond growers were early. The almond trees were early, and so he was going to be early with some stuff, some things like that. So yes, indicator plants are a big deal. Thank you, Justin, for bringing that up. Because again, they may tell you something that the calendar isn't telling you. Right now, I'm looking at these lilacs, and it's Easter. They're a tiny bit early. They're probably a week early, if I'm thinking right. Those are usually around maybe even 10 days early. But again, we've had some really nice weather. The soil temperatures are rising, so it doesn't surprise me, right? So I could look at the calendar and say, well, this is what the calendar says, or I could look at the plant that's telling me, hey, this is what nature says. We might take the nature thing. So yeah, that's awesome. All right, well, I'm going to wrap it up here. I think it's been a joy and a pleasure getting to provide this content, and I'm going to keep doing more of it. And I actually really love getting up early on Saturday mornings, and it reminds me of how much I liked Saturday mornings when I was growing grass. I really did. As long as everybody came in and did what they were supposed to do, then it was really good, So that's kind of how that works. But I'm going to just kind of step away here and say, well, thank you so much for being amazing. I'm Dave Wilber, and this is the Turfgrass Zealot Project. You can find me on YouTube, and you can follow me on Twitter. So thanks. Have a great week. I will see you in my next episode. Take care.